10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 113. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 113 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Hope you're having a great week so far, and we are ready to get into a brand new lesson. This week's lesson is going to focus on this iconic piece of vocabulary from Charlie Parker over the tune Confirmation, also a very iconic tune. But before we get into the episode, a couple of housekeeping things. If you'd like to get all of the PDFs to these episodes, all 113 at this point, please head over to our Patreon site. This is a listener-supported show, and we really need your help to keep things going. Thank you so much to all the people that have chosen to donate their hard-earned money each and every month. We totally appreciate that, and we also think that you get tremendous benefits from your $3 a month membership fee. You get access to all the PDFs. There are some transcriptions on that site. You also get a free gift as soon as you sign up of the Diatonic Method, our ebook that will keep you busy for weeks and maybe even months once you get into that stuff. I've gotten a lot of feedback on that book and people seem to be loving it. So plenty of stuff over there. And if you feel strongly enough about the show and want to help us out, you can head over to patreon.com/10-minute jazz lesson, or you can head over to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, and you can click on any one of the number of Patreon links. Go over there, get yourself signed up, and start benefiting from all of the things that come with that membership. All right, let's get into today's episode on the great Charlie Parker. So this episode comes from Charlie Parker's solo on Confirmation, which is really a pretty iconic solo. And what we've done is we've taken a really short section from the solo. It's really just 4 measures with a little bit of a 5th measure in there. And what it is in his second chorus, this is his line that he plays over the bridge. So if you guys know anything about Confirmation, it's a tune that's just packed with all these chord changes, and then we get relief from all of the, 2-beat chord changes when we get to the bridge, where things spread out a little bit into these simple 2-5-1s. So this particular piece of vocabulary is over a 2-5-1 in the key of concert B flat. On your PDF, I've actually presented it to you in concert pitch. And remember, it's kind of your job to take this and put it in other keys and things like that if you're playing a different instrument rather than a concert pitch instrument. Shouldn't be too hard for you at this point. And if it is too hard for you, that's something that you should definitely be thinking about working on. So again, only 4 measures of material, but the implications in these 4 measures are far reaching and can teach us these really big lessons on the way that Charlie Parker phrased things, the way he used his harmonic language to be one of the best improvisers ever in the history of this music, just an iconic figure in music. So the first thing I want to do is actually just play this line for you, and then we're going to break it down like we normally do on these episodes and get into the nitty-gritty of it. But here's what it sounds like. So again, this is coming out of the second A section and going into the bridge on Confirmation. And here it is one more time, just so you can hear that again before we start to break it down. So it's a really fantastic line in a lot of different ways. Let's jump right into it from the beginning. So the first thing that I notice about this line that I think is so fantastic is he actually anticipates it. He actually, in a way, starts this 2-5-1 lick one measure before it actually comes in. It's actually 2 beats before it actually comes in. Now, this is something that gets us thinking on a higher level. When we don't start every single one of our 2-5-1 pieces of vocabulary or licks or whatever we want to call them right on the downbeat, we create a little bit more guessing from the listener. If we start it right on the downbeat every single time, it becomes predictable really, really quickly. So what he's doing is he's anticipating that concert C minor 7 chord by playing 1, 2, 3, but he's actually playing it over a concert F major chord, which happens 1 bar before the bridge begins. And then we see some of his rhythmic masterwork start to come in after that. So this entire line is just running eighth notes, which is really interesting because sometimes we get caught in that, should I do something really harmonically sophisticated and not that rhythmically interesting? Or should I start to rely on rhythm and not really care about the harmonic aspects of it enough? I think in this instance, Charlie Parker chooses to make the harmonic part of it really interesting. But of course, he has to throw in a little bit of his genius at the beginning, and he doesn't start it on beat 1, he starts it on the and of 1 in the first bar of the bridge. So what we see him do is he comes in on the and of 1 with the 5 of the C minor chord, jumps right up to the root and jumps up to the 3rd, and then he simply comes down the scale of that C minor 7. This is another thing that Charlie Parker did that is something we can all study and learn from. His ability to use a vertical pattern, so jumping from 5 up to 1 up to 3, a lot of skips in there outlining the chord, and then counterbalancing that with coming down the scale is one of the true innovations that Charlie Parker made in the music of bebop. So we see him arpeggiate something in the first half of the measure, and then he comes down the scale in the second half of the measure. We're actually going to see this carry through a lot of the line. Okay, now we're over the 5 chord in the second half of this line, and we see Charlie Parker do exactly the same thing that he did over the 2 chord. He starts on the 3rd of the F7. He goes 3, 5, 7, flat 9. So he's arpeggiating that chord, and he's including one of the extensions, one of those tensions, which is that flat 9. And then what does he do after he plays the flat 9? He comes right down the scale again. So he goes 1, 7, 6, 5 after that. So it's very, very similar to the measure that came right before it, and he's really tying it all together in this particular piece of vocabulary. Really, really genius. Now, another way to think about that arpeggio of 3, 5, 7, flat 9 is you can actually think about it as a diminished 7th chord based off of the 3rd. That's something that a lot of improvisers, including myself, like to think about. It just gives us some different structures. And I may talk about that in future episodes a little bit more. But you can either think about that as an arpeggio going up to the 9 off of the 3rd, or you can think about it as a diminished 7th chord based off of the 3rd. Okay, so now we get to the resolution point. And this is really interesting because he resolves actually right to the root, which we do see a fair amount in the playing of Charlie Parker, but it's one of those things that I think people are scared to do sometimes, is actually resolve to the root, but it's all about the line as a whole. The root is a completely fine note to resolve to as long as the strength of the line is really intact and sounds great. Okay, so what does he do over the 1 chord? Well, he starts with another thing that Charlie Parker really innovated as a musician, enclosure. So what he's basically doing is he lands on that root, goes down to the 7th, goes up to the 9, back to the 7th, and back to the root. So he states the root as a resolution point, and then he quickly starts surrounding the root again by playing 7, 2, or 7, 9, 7, back to the root. So he's surrounding that root with the 7, the 9, back to the 7, then he plays the root. Now, he finishes up the line by doing another harmonic device, which is he takes the chord of the 9 and he arpeggiates it down. So on beat 3, we have root, 6, 4, and then we have 2. Now, if you look at that, that is actually a 7th chord based off of the 2. It's a C minor chord over a B flat major 7 chord. So he's using that diatonic chordal structure stuff that we've talked about in the past. And then in the second bar of the 1 chord, he simply plays 3 to 5, bringing it all together, bringing it to a really, really strong close using chord tones. So all of those things, I know I went through that stuff really, really quickly, but again, we've only got 10 minutes here. I could probably talk about this for an hour. But all of those things put together make for what I think is one of the most memorable lines that I've ever heard Charlie Parker play. I've been studying this line since I was a kid. I remember the first time I ever heard him play it, I said, man, I have to know what that is, and I transcribed it like almost right away. And it's a line that I've definitely used in my own playing. I've heard hundreds of other great musicians using that in their playing. It's just one of those iconic lines that's really, really memorable that Charlie Parker plays. Okay? So hopefully that all makes sense to you. If you have any questions, make sure you shoot me an email, 10minutejazzlesson@gmail.com, and I would love to talk to you a little bit further about this line and maybe answer any of the stuff that I didn't address, because I'm sure that I missed something. But this would be a great line to learn and really tear apart, maybe put it in a bunch of different keys, take one measure here, one measure there, come up with your own lines off of those measures. There's just an endless amount of things that we can do with a piece of vocabulary as wonderful as this. Okay? So if you enjoyed this episode, if you're enjoying all our episodes, please go and sign up to be a patron of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. As I said, this is a listener-supported show, and we really can't do it without you guys. All right, we will see you on Monday with another podcast, and then we'll see you next Friday with a brand new episode. Have a great weekend, everybody. We will talk to you soon. Bye.